Consultation. My name is Christina Jimenez, and I am an attorney at Jimenez Floyd. We deal primarily with Texas family law, and today I have my lovely paralegals here with me, and we are going to be talking about mental health within the context of family law. And so I guess really quickly, let's go ahead and introduce all you guys. And so Corina.
I'm Corina Montoya, and I'm one of the family law paralegals.
And how long have you been doing this?
For 13 years.
And are you, what else just happened to you?
I'm board certified.
What? Okay. And so, Gretchen, go ahead. Or Greta, sorry. I'm sorry,
She has
Greta.
a nickname.
I'm Greta. I'm one of the paralegals for the firm.
Okay, how long have you been doing this?
11 years this year.
Awesome Blossom. And Nydeline?
My name is Nydeline Villarreal, and I'm a paralegal here, and I've been doing this for 5 years.
And I don't know why, but they're nervous. It's just
I'm nervous.
So we're just going to have a conversation today about mental health within the context of family law cases. And so typically, what we're dealing with is we're dealing with divorces, child custody cases, enforcement actions where people can go to jail. And so it's a lot.
It is.
It's heavy and it's stressful and it's hard on us, which, I was talking to an attorney yesterday and telling him how blessed I feel, at least, to have you guys and to have Floyd, because we're like in this together, right? But a lot of the things that we have to do when we're dealing with these cases is we have to help our clients get through it, right? And we spend a lot of time, I think, encouraging people and calming people and trying to teach people. And so today we kind of just came up with 6, tips or topics that we thought would be helpful to share with others. If you find yourself in a situation like this where you're in a custody case or in a divorce and you are struggling, like, number one, I think 99% of our clients at some point they're struggling with it. And so, hopefully some of the things that we share with you guys today, you will take it under advisement, you will look into it, and, hopefully it will help you if you find yourself in this situation. And so, first tip is therapy. We recommend therapy all the time,
Absolutely.
all day, every day. And so, why do you guys think that therapy is necessary, important, what?
I think it just gives, it gives that third party the ability to just give you that safe space for you to, talk about what's going on. They're not going to judge you. They're, things of that nature. Maybe you're not comfortable talking to your family, to your friends, things of that nature. And, some of the things that happen in relationships or, in your marriage, you just don't want to share with the outside world sometimes. And so maybe a therapist is your best option.
Do you guys have this happen to you? Because I know I have it happen to me a whole lot, where the clients want to treat me as the therapist.
Every day.
And so what do you guys think about that?
They need to speak with somebody that's qualified, first of all, to help them through these things. They're grieving the loss of their relationship and the changes that are going on at home with themselves, with their children, and we're not qualified for that. We're qualified to help them with the legal aspect of the case and not necessarily the counseling or therapy sessions that they're wanting us to provide.
Right.
And going back to the therapist part is that they're an unbiased party,
Right,
as well. So if they're going to give an opinion, they're going to give it like based on facts and their research and prior things, like as opposed to us, like a lot of it, we see a lot of cases, so it's it also becomes emotionally taxing to us,
right,
to be listening to these stories sometimes. So
well, and sometimes, I find myself when these people are coming to me and they're sharing these like horrific experiences, I start becoming emotionally involved in the case, and I become emotionally invested And as an attorney, I think that's a dangerous place to be, because I had one judge tell me all the time, like, you just drink the Kool-Aid all the time. And I do drink all the Kool-Aid, because my clients are always right. But it's not a good place to be, because then I lose my ability to be objective, right? And to exercise logic. And you don't want me being emotional about a particular situation, because I'm not going to be my best version of myself if I'm doing that, right? But, and also, like you said, I don't know, like, how to deal with a lot of these issues. Like, these therapists, they go to school, they have tips and tricks, and, you know, I don't know. And the other thing that I will tell all of my clients is, it is much cheaper to go to a therapist, and it'll be a better value, it'll be a better use of your money to go to a therapist than to try to pay us, because we charge more than therapists, right? And so I fully recommend people going to therapy. Now, here's what I will tell you, and I'll ask you guys, because I presume you know. Can the other side subpoena your therapy appointment, or your records from therapists?
They can.
They can.
Okay. And can they subpoena the therapist to come in and testify?
They can.
And so this is the part that I think is super crappy about the system, right? Because you're going to therapy to better yourself, to help you maybe with substance abuse issues, with sexual abuse issues, with alcoholism, with, I mean, just again, grieving the loss of your relationship and your marriage. And you can't really be 100% honest for fear that that will be used against you in a later proceeding. And that really kind of sucks.
Right.
And so when I encourage my clients to go to therapy, I always kind of give them that as a little tip and trick, like, listen, I want you to get help, I need you to have an outlet, but keep in mind that these are going to be potentially admissible and used against you. The other thing is that therapists have an affirmative duty if there's any sort of outcries or anything, right? Does anyone want to talk about that?
I mean, they're required. They're mandated reporters, and they're required to contact the authorities.
Yeah, if there's any sort of allegations of abuse towards children, they have to report it. And so, you know, those are things that you guys kind of have to keep in mind when making these decisions. But, you know, I tell my clients all the time, I've been practicing law for 16 years, I have been married for 16 years, and I have been in therapy for 16 years. And I haven't, you know, thankfully gone through a divorce or a custody dispute, but I feel like it's just so incredibly healthy just in general to have someone to unload on that, you know, is not going to judge me because they're being paid to not judge me. So you better not judge me. So, anything else on therapy? Like anything else you guys tell our clients or?
I was just gonna say really quickly that as far as therapy goes too, like the therapist has prior knowledge. Like you're starting from the beginning. Like for all you know, like these custody issues and the divorce, you know, like there's like some unresolved issues in your past that we're not, you know, we don't know about. So we only know what happened from here to here. And like when you're going to a therapist, you know, I hope that you guys are starting from the beginning so they can unpack that with you completely. Like, so yeah.
No, that's actually like a really, really great point. And, you know, so a lot of times when I'm talking to my clients and they start telling me the issues that they're having with the other side, I'll ask, like, did this happen to them when they were kids? Or, like, what's their relationship like with their parents? And so, you know, most of the time when people are going through these divorces, it's not necessarily about the things that are going on within the relationship. It's all the stuff that is underneath that, right? The baggage, and they don't know how to deal with it. Now, we're talking about it in the context of a divorce and child custody case, but I mean, have y'all told clients in the past, like maybe y'all don't need to go through this process and maybe you need to go through therapy instead, like with your spouse?
I know you have many times.
And I don't think I've ever just, I haven't been the one who has the idea or who says it like that, but a lot of times when they're still talking to their partners or things of that nature, I encourage them. I say, you know, we're not advocates for divorce just because we're in this business. You know, we're not always going to say, yeah, you should get a divorce. You know, if you believe that you can still work it out, then you should, and it's not, you're not in a, there's not domestic violence or abuse or things of that nature, and you think you can still salvage the relationship or the marriage. We definitely are advocates for that too. So.
Absolutely. I've had many clients come to me and they're almost worried to tell us
Mhm,
that
mhm.
they are thinking of reconciling and working it out because they're worried that we're going to get upset, and that's absolutely not the case.
That's true.
I mean, they know what's best for them, and we're just here to help them get through this situation.
Right. Yeah, I tell people that all the time. Like, if you can, during consultations specifically, like, I will say, I do not wish this process on my worst enemy. And so if there is any way that you guys can figure it out without bringing lawyers in, do that, because it's going to save you a whole lot of heartache, a whole lot of money. Just cut the BS and try to figure this thing out. There's also things like other tools, like during a custody dispute, there's co-parenting. Well, actually, I guess we're going to go to the parenting classes, but there is co-parenting. What are they called? Parenting facilitators, right? So parenting facilitators, I don't know. I think that it would qualify as some sort of therapy. Essentially, what happens is you have somebody that's appointed by the court to help you guys talk about parenting issues, right? And so discipline issues, visitation schedules, communication, etc. So even when you're in the context of a freaking custody battle, there's people that we can get in to help you guys work through those issues. I just think, therapy is awesome, and anytime we are in this type of family law cases, we need to have therapy if at all possible.
I
So,
think since COVID, I've really seen a lot of courts using those parenting facilitators more frequently. Becoming pretty common.
It was a high stress time.
It was.
Oh, probably contributed to
right,
that too, so.
right? Yeah, and I mean, those parenting facilitators, they can come in and they can testify, and if one of the parents is the problem, if they're not really trying to work towards a common goal, the judge isn't going to be happy with you, right? And so go to therapy, get the tools, get the resources, and then translate that into your case. It's going to end up saving you a whole bunch of money with litigation expenses, and it's going to save you a whole lot of energy and stress. So
And it's better for the kids.
exactly. So the second tip or tool that we have is parenting classes and education. Who wants to talk about that?
So I actually went through a parenting class when I went through my divorce, and I learned a lot. A lot of information that even though I was a child of divorce, but they taught me a lot about the co-parenting, not being, I guess, the separation and the co-parenting separately. It was really helpful for my situation.
Most counties nowadays require it. Like before you close out a divorce case, you have to do a parenting class, you have to file a certificate. And again, they're gonna go in, they're gonna teach you tips and tricks to co-parent, to deal with discipline issues, to what else, deal with communication issues. So I recommend, and especially, I feel like we've had these cases where we have a parent who I guess is being accused of, they don't know what's going on, like with the kid. They don't know how to raise the kid. They don't know, what schools they go to or the doctors or whatever. When I have those allegations, I'll say, go online, take as many online parenting courses as you can. If you can give me 60 hours worth of parenting certificates, I want every single one of them to present to the court, because if the court believes that you're trying to ascertain this knowledge, and you can prove that you're trying to do it, it just makes you look wonderful in court, right? So, what else?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And I think it eases some of the stress that comes with, your situation, your divorce, your case, just educating yourself, and even parenting. I mean, we don't have a rule book. We don't know how to parent. A lot of us are, learning as we go. And I think it helps with the other party as well, because as you're learning, these things can help, just the situation altogether. Just, and it may be things that you think you already know, but if you educate yourself, then I don't know, I just feel like it just eases some of the stress, and it helps the children out in the situation as well. So
I feel like a lot of times people think that they're going through this alone. Like what they're dealing with, nobody's ever dealt with before. Nobody can relate, nobody can understand. And when you get into therapy and into these parenting classes, you start to realize like, okay, lots of people have dealt with this. I am not alone. There's a way out of this. I have to figure out the tools to get to, to figure it out. And so, and there's group parenting classes that you can go to, which I would probably recommend just because I want a squad, right? Like I want to be able to talk to people about things and to know like, listen, I'm not alone in this, and have people to relate. So I would recommend doing that as well. Again, with parenting classes, and with parenting facilitation, all those things, anything that you do and say in there can be used against you in a hearing, right? But if you're doing good things and you're growing and you're learning, that will also be something that we can use when we go to court, right? So think about that. Anything else on parenting classes and education? No? So third thing that we recommend is to have a village. What do y'all say about that?
I mean, it's really important. It kind of goes to support, having people that you can have it like an outlet to get some of these emotions and your fears and kind of talk through things. And sometimes, especially when you, like a support group, when you get with people that have been through what you've been through, they can give you ideas on how to move forward, how to help your children, how to co-parent with your soon-to-be ex. I think it's very important.
So can we talk about how we need to have, we should have said a positive village,
Yes.
a energetic, fulfilling, because just because you have a village, that means a good village.
Right.
Sometimes the village needs to be burned down, and we're going to rebuild
Find a
it.
new
Right?
village.
We're relocating the village, and so because we do have clients that have a village, and the village is like, oh,
toxic.
Lord.
Yes.
Help us.
Very toxic.
They don't help the situation.
They make it
feed.
worse.
They feed the toxicity.
Yes.
It's like
The bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then they get on the phone with them and they're like, well.
Let me just tell you what's happening.
Yes.
But I think going back to what you were saying about being relatable, that relatability, the groups, that helps. Just again knowing that you're not alone, but also just knowing that you have a good support. Just that foundation for you and your children, because when you are, you're getting out of a relationship and a divorce, you probably feel very alone, and so you definitely need that support group for you and your children.
Yeah, and so, here's what I will say, is unfortunately, especially in this area of law, there are a lot of times that when people come to us, they are literally at the lowest point of their life, right? Like the worst that they've ever been, most difficult thing they've ever had to endure, and they don't see a way out. Like they think that it's done, everything's done. And we've had, situations where we've had to call 911, right? Like we've had to, talk people out of some really bad situations to the best of our ability while we were waiting for the authorities. We've had some pretty scary, very scary situations, and mental health within the context of these issues, it's a real thing. I know one of the CLEs that we went to, they said that when you are going through a divorce, that they did scans on the brain, and it is literally affecting the same part of your brain that is affected when somebody dies, somebody that you love dies, right? And so to try to, as attorneys or as paralegals, minimize it and say oh, you got to get over it, you got to shake it off, push through. That's just not realistic, right? And so having the people that we've had those issues with, they were very alone, right? Like Vera, then no matter what we would explain to them, what I would say to them, I've done thousands and thousands of cases. I have helped thousands of people through this. I promise you, you're gonna get through it. They just couldn't see it, right?
No.
And so those are the people that I'm pushing to therapy. I'm pushing to psychiatry. Honestly, I'm saying, damn, what happens, in court, because at this point, I'm worried about you doing something really bad, right, to yourself or to someone else. And so, having that love and support of the people around you, I mean, I couldn't do it, wouldn't do it. I was telling Nydeline that we're so blessed because we have our little village together in our office. And so when we have those hard conversations with clients, because I mean, I think all of us have cried, like just this week. This morning that happened. And so, but we've all, had those cases and those clients where it's just like, damn, it just hits you in a certain spot. But we have each other, right? Where we can call and say, like, listen, this happened. And we get through it together, right?
I feel like the
Nydeline, are you crying now?
like, excuse me. the case is kind of like, to me, it's like a roller coaster of emotions, right? I feel like the emotions are really high at the beginning, and they go up to the temporary orders hearing, and then they kind of come down, and then they kind of, they're leveled out a little bit, and then once you start getting ready for final, here we go again, and then it kind of goes down once the mediation or final hearing happens, and then they seem to kind of slow down. Now I've seen some of them are just, stay up there, and they just kind of stay there. But I think for the most part, it's just really up and down, and I think that's really taxing on yourself.
Right.
Yeah. It's terrible. So the fourth thing that we had is organize your evidence. Who wants to talk about that?
Like, our discovery queen over
Yeah,
here.
discovery
I mean,
queen.
I'll own that. I think it really does help though with the anxiety. If we are really good about saying, okay, here's your homework packet. This is a list of things that I need you guys to start working on and start providing. And it helps you feel involved. It helps you feel in control in somewhat of your case, and that you're helping to make the difference. But when you have things organized and you give them to us in an organized manner, number one, it keeps your costs down because we don't have to sift through hundreds of documents and it's there. And so that in itself helps because this process is not cheap. But I think it helps with the anxiety for sure. For sure.
I think also, our clients know their evidence the best.
They
So
do.
we don't have all of the information. And if you give us this information overload, then for us, it's not just stressful because we know how to handle it, but again, the cost. But also, if you give it to us, then we're able to say, okay, don't worry about this part. We have that, right? Because a lot of times it comes in, it's like a timeline of events. Like this happened, and we're like, okay, we have those photos, we have these documents, and everything's organized. It helps keep the stress down. Otherwise, we're like, okay, but do you have the documents? Or I haven't received those documents. Where are those text messages? Or I need you to reformat them. Or we can't use that because of whatever, but you have this other information that we can use, and it helps them to kind of understand, okay, I don't have to worry about that part right now because I know they have it. I've gotten that to them, and I know that I can prove that.
The other end is when they're sending us the same document 3-4 times. We already have this. Like, you've already sent this to me. So if you have everything organized, you know for a fact, okay, I actually sent it to you on this day. I don't need to worry about sending it again because there goes the cost as well. We have to download it. We have to review it. We have to save it. And that's just money that is unnecessarily needing to be spent.
And honestly, there's just some things that we don't need. Like, there's just like an excess of documents that we receive sometimes that we're like, we don't really need this. It's just not, wouldn't help your case in any way. So, and like, it's just like an overload. When we're receiving like thousands of documents a day, having to go through them, it's like, yeah, if it was just organized and you know exactly what you want to provide to us is like, you know, timeline of events, how Karina said, like it's just way easier
Well,
for
and
everyone.
I feel like it helps us to do our job better,
Yes.
right? Because when I have clients, and I call it information overload, right? Where they're telling me a million stories, they're giving me a million photos, a million videos, and I am one of those attorneys that if you give it to me, I have to watch it. I have to look at it because I always have this anxiety of I'm going to miss
Yes.
something, and I don't want to miss it, right? What if it's that's that one piece of evidence that's going to make or break my case, and I missed it? And so, but what ends up happening is I spend, 10 hours of looking at useless information when I could have taken those 10 hours to really prepare an extremely effective case, right? And so I just think, and we have long conversations with our clients about, like, at the onset of their case, this is what is expected, this is what we want you to do. I'd say it's about 50-50, right? Like 50% of our clients will do it. Gretchen's like 20, 80, 20% of our clients do it. But the ones who do it, I feel like we do a better job.
Yes.
I feel like they're happier with our services. I feel like their anxiety is very low because they feel more confident that we have it, right? The ones who don't, they spend lots and lots of money with us. They're constantly scrambling, constantly, chasing their tails, and we are, just spending lots of hours just looking at stuff. And I don't want to do that. I don't like doing that to my clients. But it's also, again, going back to the mental health component of that is I think that sometimes people just get so anxious that they don't know, like they can't stop to think, like, is this really going to help me or not? They just want to send everything to us so that we can tell them, like, okay, this is going to help or it's not going to help,
And
right?
then you have the ones on the other end that are like, what is it, paralysis by analysis? They don't even know.
They don't
And
help
so,
at all.
yeah, they don't send
Yeah.
you anything.
Or they can't remember dates to save their lives, and you're just like, did it happen in 2020, in 2022? And they're like, they can't remember, and we try to kind of help them through that. But yeah, it's tough because like back to what you were saying about the part of your brain, and I get that a lot of it is traumatic and it's just very stressful, so a lot of people just shut down. So again, we try to help with that part, but we can only do so much. They need to also, give us as much evidence as organized as possible so that we can do the best job in helping them also.
No, I mean, I've had to have like some, I just had one of these conversations a few weeks ago because one of our clients, she was spiraling, and she was spiraling to a point where I felt like I couldn't help her, right? And I had to explain to her, like, listen, if you want me on your team, you're gonna have to figure this out. And I had some choice words for her in that context of that conversation, but I was like, you have to get it together because I cannot help you if you are not willing to help yourself, right? And so you're now on my team, and now as a member of my team, this is what you're going to do. And if you don't do these things, I gotta jump off your team. Because at that point, the way that I look at it is my job is to help people, right? And if you are not going to accept my help, then I don't need to waste your time. I don't need to waste your money. Maybe there will be another attorney that can get through to you that will be able to help you with stuff. But you have to figure out these tools and utilize these resources so that you can be the best version of yourself throughout this process. And it's hard. It's so hard, but you got to figure it out.
And don't wait till the last minute. I was having this issue with a client of mine. We were responding to discovery. He had a whole entire month. And I'm really good about sending a list. This is what I need. I review the file for what I have so I don't request unnecessary documents. I set reminders to follow up every week. He was ignoring me. And so we called him and he's just like, yeah, I can bring it in. And his deadline was already the next day, and he didn't bring it in until 5:00 on his deadline. You were set to approve it. You couldn't because I hadn't had the opportunity to have everything ready. And he was upset, and he was anxious, and he was frustrated. And I told him, I'm like, look, I had to have the hard conversation. If you don't produce the documents, what's going to happen? And he was a little upset, and I told him, I'm like, this is why you need to be organized. This is why you need to send little bits here and there of what I ask you when I ask you to do it, so you're not doing everything at the last minute. And he was very frustrated.
Well, and then again, so when that happens, we have to contact the other attorney, request an extension. We have to prepare the paperwork to get the extension. And so now we're racking up more fees just because he didn't give us the documents when he was supposed to. Right? So organize your evidence. I do think that it's therapeutic to do it. You know, a lot of times there's these things called a request for admission that we can do in discovery. And I like to give my clients the ability to draft the request for admissions. And it's essentially like admit or deny that on February 15th, 2023, you hit me in the face with a hammer. That's why I said
That really fast.
I'm sorry.
I was all like thinking a shoe. She's like a hammer.
I don't know if that's ever happened. Not to one of our clients, they come. But so you get to do admit or deny questions. And I have had clients who will go through and they'll do like 100 different questions. And it's really good because they get to kind of sit down and process, like, okay, here's all the strengths of my case, right? Here's all the things that I know that he did, that I can prove that he did, and they start getting a little bit more comfortable with, like, okay, we got this, right? And it helps us, right? We have to do it.
And I mean, they're the only ones that have that information. That's not something that, you know, we know, unless, of course, you know, they give us that information, but a lot of times they don't.
Right.
And they don't really know that, they don't remember it until, like, you know, they're actually in it and they're like, oh yeah, I remember when this happened and this happened. And
or they tell us, and then we're sitting there, like, while they're trying to look through text messages and trying to figure out dates, and the clock's just running, and you're just spending money, right? So yeah, organize your evidence. In a complex case, you're likely going to get hit with discovery. That means they're going to ask you for tax returns, bank statements, credit cards, text messages, photos, videos. You name it, they're probably going to ask for it. And so just start working on getting it all together for us. So number 5 was self-care / giving yourself grace.
that's so important.
Yes.
So important. I mean, just because of the stress, you know, that you're already under, self-care just helps so much to alleviate a little bit of the stress. And, you know, a lot of these people, they don't know how to love themselves. And that's part of the, you know, the stress and reason why they're in these positions sometimes. And I think that it just, you help to find out who you are again.
I also think that you're under, like, you're basically under a microscope. So a lot of times the other party is trying to find all the bad things that you've done, that you do, how you live, how you function. I mean, and that's really stressful. I can't imagine someone just watching me all the time, trying to, you know, wait until I make a mistake. And if you don't give yourself grace, or you stop guilting yourself or things of that nature, then that can really affect your mental health. So self-care, you know, part of it is therapy, maybe exercising, you know, just trying to exercise healthy habits and coping mechanisms as well.
Yeah, and self-care looks different for everyone, whether it be meditation, sewing, reading a book.
Boundaries.
Boundaries. I was joining on the boundary. I'm like setting boundaries because we're our own worst enemies sometimes. And if you're like, you go in the divorce process, like I can assume that some of our clients are like looking at their social media, the other party's social media, or, you know, driving by their house or something. And I'm like, you got to set those boundaries with yourself because
I feel
it only gets worse for you.
A lot of our
ultimately.
cases, you know, you have one that is really more, I guess, aggressive, and then you have the other one that is more meek and mild. In so many cases that don't set healthy boundaries, and so I think when you are in that position, you are, you know, on that end of it, I think that's so important because you feel empowered once you start putting your foot down and say, no, we're not doing this, and you feel like you feel like a new person.
And a lot of it is like the phone calls as well. You know, sometimes the other party will be making the phone calls like, where's my child at? What are y'all doing? Or, you know, trying to track locations. you have my child, you have to pick up the phone, you have to answer, you have to tell me where you're at, things of that nature, and you don't have to do that, you know, I mean, of course, let them know that the child is okay, updates on the child, things like that, but you don't have to just constantly be telling them where you are, what you're doing, who you're with, sharing locations, I mean, that's just insanity.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite sayings, and I use it with my team and I use it with my clients, is you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? And so, you know, I tell them, they know all the way that I am, like I'm going to the gym, I'm going to the spa, I'm going to the bathtub. And then that is about me taking care of me, right? Because how am I going to have the energy and the ability to help others if I'm not taking care of myself first, right? And so I try to, and I feel like most of the time it is our single mothers
Yes.
that struggle
Yes.
so much
Yes.
with this idea of, I have to be with my kids, I have to take care of my kids, I can't do anything else but deal with my kids, because if I take, you know, a couple of hours in the morning to go to the gym, it's going to be used against me, right? If I, you know, take a night to go to dinner with my girlfriends, then he's going to get mad and I can't leave my children. I understand why people get anxious about it, but I just don't know that you can be the best mother possible if you are not a woman first, right? And so, and I think a lot of our dads struggle with it too, but I typically will see this whole thing where, and they're, you know, sometimes just sobbing, like I'm so tired, all I do is work and get home and take care of the kids and clean and do this, and then I go to sleep and I have to do it all over again. And it's just like, listen, you gotta take a break, like just take a minute, and it is okay to take that minute, like you'll be all right, right?
Yep.
But I also think to do it in a healthy way.
Right.
Because a lot of our clients, when they're in this season, they often go to the bad habits, to the drinking and the going out, the partying, the jumping into another relationship. I'm not judging, I'm just saying, you know, that's fine in some cases, but most of the cases they're not ready for that.
No.
Or, you know, they just haven't gotten out of one situation when they're already in another. And a lot of times even that next relationship is not going very well either. And that's where it's tough, because they're putting the kids through this stuff, and it's a lot, you know. And again, like Nydeline was saying, with the partying and the, you know, drinking and all of that, just if you can do it in a healthy way and be, you know, balance it out. I think that's moderation.
Right, and I was gonna say, like, it's essentially like they're trying to fill the void, but I personally feel like the only way to get over something like this is through it. Like, you can't get over it, you can't fill it with other things, like, you just have to go through it, feel it, and it is what it is.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, going to the whole drinking and drugs and partying and doing all of these things in the context of a family law case, that's not going to make our jobs any easier, right? I mean, a lot of times when you're in the middle of these disputes, the court will lay down injunctions, right? So no drinking or drugs 12 hours prior to or during your possession, right? They'll lay down a morality clause saying no boyfriends or girlfriends overnight from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. You know, a lot of times they'll do random drug screens on you, right? And you test hot for cocaine because one night you just went out and got drunk and did some cocaine, and now you're going to test positive, and now you're going to lose your kid, right? And so, you know, going back to having a healthy village, right? And then, you know, using that ability to have that self-care in a healthy way, that's what you need while you're going through this process, because otherwise it can completely derail your case and your life, and then we end up in very, very bad situations.
And just create, I mean, the stress of going down that route is so much more, and the road to get to where you need to be is going to be a very long and painful one.
And I mean, if we had a nickel for every single time that we got that call, like things are going smooth in a case, and then we get a call of, hey, I just got picked up with a DWI with my kids in the car, right? I was out partying and my friend had drugs on him and I got arrested, right? There was a party and there was a fight and I ended up getting arrested. Like there's all these scenarios and it's sometimes really, really sad because they're good parents, right? And they're good people, but they're just making bad choices and then that choice ends up haunting them, in our case, and it's hard to recover from those situations.
And it's a long road sometimes. I mean, I don't know, I know we had one where, it was a long time ago, she had a federal, or a temporary ex parte protective order against her, and she wanted her kids, and according to her, the opposing party like pushed her into that action that she normally would never have done, but because of that, she didn't have her kids and she had this protective order. She couldn't stay in her home, and like getting her to where she was at the end, she had her kids, she had the home. It was a really long road.
Yeah.
Years, I think.
Yeah. So just be mindful of all of those things. And again, when we're saying these things, we're not saying it flippantly, like, hey, don't go out.
Right.
Like we understand, like when you're dealing with this, like it's a whole lot, right? And it's going to be extremely difficult. But our hope is that, if you're listening to this, that you will understand that if you stay away from these things, you're going to have a much more successful case, successful life. Everything will work out. It'll be easier for you, right? So the last tip that we have is to find an attorney that you trust, find a legal team that you trust, and listen. That's key component here. Listen, please, to that team, right? Who wants to talk about that? Anybody?
I think going to what Greta was saying with the temporary ex parte protective order, I think that's a huge component to some of these cases, and just because you get to that point, people make bad choices and there's mistakes, that happen. But listening, reading the protective orders and ensuring that you're not violating those. Even though you feel like you're not the aggressor, sometimes people go to jail, sometimes they have just been punched and then they hit back and they, they're the ones who scratch up the other person or whatever, and they end up going to jail. And although we want to say, okay, yeah, you're right, we understand, we believe you, if you're the one that has a protective order against you, you have to abide by it. Otherwise, it's going to just derail your case. It's going to end badly. You will end up back in jail. They could potentially extend the temporary ex parte protective order. There's so much that can happen when it comes to those cases.
Yeah, how many times and we've been on both ends of this, right? Where our client is the one who has the protective order against them, or the other side has the protective order against them, but it is literally, and I say like they're so in love, I don't know that we could actually qualify it as love sometimes, but they're so engrossed in this relationship that it's almost like they can't see straight, right? They don't care what the consequences are. And it's really sad because sometimes it is a protective order's been granted, an ex parte protective order's been granted. We tell them, don't call them, don't talk to them. I don't care if the other side calls you and tries to talk to you. You can't say anything to them. Don't go to the house, don't go to school, don't do all these things. And they will have a night where maybe they have a little bit too much to drink and they send a text message of, I love you so much, you're my world, I want you back, please forgive me. I just want our family back, something like that. And the next thing that they know, there's a police knocking at their front door, pulling them in because they didn't listen to us, right? Because they're violating this protective order. And it was a purely, I guess, innocent thing, it was just I love you type thing, not a threat, not anything like that. But then they end up in jail. Right?
Yeah. And it only, I guess it helps the other party's case because it's like maybe you weren't the violent person. Maybe you had one night where something happened or there was a miscommunication, something may have happened, and we're trying to get you out of that, but that won't help. And some of those people end up back together after all this is said and done, and now they're having to deal with these charges that are now on, one of the parties because they couldn't stay away or, stay away from the home, things like so.
But I mean, I think we're talking about that in the context of protective orders, but I also feel like just in all issues, right? And again, you have to find an attorney that you trust. And I will readily admit that I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea as it pertains to being their attorney, right? As a matter of fact, in our office, we have cases where like, hey, this is a good Julie case, right? This is a good Julie client. This is a good Floyd client. This is a good CJ client, because we understand that there's going to be different clients with different personalities that are going to respond differently. We even do that with the paralegals, right? This is a good case for Corina, so, but we do that because we want to make sure that we're building this rapport with you and that you do have faith in us. Because what is the saying, like, oh, hell, I'm screwed up, I'm not even gonna try. But if you don't trust what I say, then you're not going to listen to me, right? And you're not gonna follow through, you're gonna disregard. And so, I've had that happen before where I've had to tell a client, like, listen, I don't think that you have confidence in my ability, and I need you to find somebody that you have confidence in so that they can, so that you can do what's best for you and do what's best for your kiddos and your family, right? And so, interview attorneys. When people talk to me, I will say, go out and interview other lawyers, read the reviews, watch their social media, like figure out who you're going to mesh well with, because that's how you're going to find success in this process, right? We've had it in our office where we switch paralegals because what paralegal will come in and say, like, listen, I just don't know that I'm getting through to this guy. I don't know that she's going to listen to me. I feel like Corina might, or Nydeline might respond better to them. But you got to find people that you trust, and do what they say, right?
Yes.
Discovering behaviors, phone calls, boundaries, therapy, parenting classes, like all those things, you're going to find success in these types of cases, right?
Yes. And just strategy altogether. I feel like sometimes we have, I've said this in the past where I think sometimes you guys come up with like a map, for people's cases, and you're just like, if you go here, if you go there, if you do this, then you're going to get the outcome that you want. And if you don't, then it's gonna take us a longer road, but we might still get there. But if you listen, then we'll get there quicker. Hopefully, more cost effective, less stress, less anxiety. So.
I know we've had like certain cases where they're not very confident in in your strategy or Floyd's strategy. But, we kind of push them along. Just trust us. Trust the process. They know what they're doing. And then once they hit that goal, the first goal, I guess, in your map, they're like, okay. And so that they start to see it coming together. And then they're like, okay, now I understand. Now I see why you wanted me to do this. But they had to put the trust in us. And without that, we wouldn't have gotten them to that goal on their map to get them to the ending. And sometimes that does happen and they don't listen, and then sometimes we have to explain, okay, well, because you did this and because you didn't listen, this is why this has happened. And sometimes that's the light bulb moment where they're like, okay, now I'm gonna do it your way. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just have to move on to somebody else.
Right.
I mean, like, one of the things that I will say in my closing meetings, because, when we're closing out a case in our office, we always have a closing meeting, and we talk about what could we have done better, what did you appreciate, anybody on our team you want to, congratulate, but I'll typically always get I just want to thank you guys for, like, helping me and guiding me and getting me through this, and my response to them is, well, I want to thank you for trusting us. Right? Because if you hadn't trusted us and if you had not listened and followed through, you wouldn't have received the results. So really it was you doing all the work, right? But you had to trust us and you had to listen to us first, right? And so, and I tell people all the time, why are you paying me all this money if you're not gonna listen to me, right? Like, go save your money and go do what you want to do, because you're doing it anyway, right? And I've told people too, like, I'm not gonna stick around like to see this whole thing spiral out of control. I would rather bow out gracefully, because I know where you're heading, right? I know that where you're gonna end up, and I don't want to be standing there next to you in that courtroom when it happens.
It's
and so,
heartbreaking.
yeah, it is.
It
It is.
really is.
You know, and thankfully we've reached a point as a firm where we get to kind of cherry pick our clients at this point, and we get to say, like, we're not going to be able to help you because you don't want to listen, and we don't want to stick around for the bad things. Just don't want to do it. So yeah. Give us what else? So, hopefully you guys have learned a little bit throughout this process. As we always state on the consultation, this is not to be construed as legal advice. If you find yourself in a situation where you have a divorce, where you have a custody case, where you're going through any sort of family law case, find yourself a good attorney that you trust, that you're going to listen to, and listen to them, because they're going to know best, right? So make sure that you follow us on all social media platforms. We have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have TikTok, we have Facebook, any social media platform that you can think of, we're likely on that. And we appreciate you guys listening.